Welcome to Magical Moments with Alena Chapman, the place for you to break free from the norm and celebrate your life, because what we believe in our hearts becomes our reality. This is Magical Moments with Alena Chapman.
Welcome to Magical Moments, and I'm your host, Alena Chapman, and this show is all about that ease and that betterment in your life, which you really do deserve, especially now with everything that's going on in our minds and in the world, and then back into our minds. We absorb it, we mull it over, we keep it there. We can't do that. And it is time for us to have some ease and betterment. Now, for a magical nugget, I always like to give one at the beginning. And I kept going back and forth on which one. There were two, but I finally decided that this one was one that I think is the best. Right now, during all this whole Corona, even before Corona started, I was noticing how people were, let's just say, very satisfied to do less, very satisfied to have excuses, very satisfied to just use the whole state of affairs out in the world as an excuse as to why they're not doing what they feel they want to do in their heart, or provide the services they feel they can or want to, or maybe they're bored with. And I have to say, it's very interesting to see that we're allowing ourselves to rely on excuses. And meanwhile, I am watching other people who are being innovative, who are thinking of unique ways to keep their businesses going or to keep their lives going. I see other people who are using this time to better themselves and their families and their relationships. I see other people really taking the bull by the horns and saying, this is what I can do, and this is what I'm going to do. Yes, there's chaos out there, but I am going to take control of what I can take control of, and I am going to make it happen. And those are the people that leave the house when we were all stuck in our homes forever, and some of us still are stuck in our homes, and then we come out, and they're the ones that, oh my gosh, they lost weight. They didn't gain weight, they lost. They started new businesses, or they had a business and it's thriving because they thought of innovative ways. How can we go from knowing that we have an excuse, that we're leaning on excuses, and move from it? I think it's time for you to have a seat in that wonderful comfy chair. Grab something like a hot tea or something that you want to sip on and think about, okay, these are the circumstances of the world. But am I stuck in that, or am I really thinking of innovative ways? And title your paper, 3 innovative ways I'm going to employ this week. And sit down and think of some strategies. They don't have to be big. You know me, I'm the baby step girl. I believe in baby steps. I believe baby steps can conquer mountains. But what is strategic in your life? If it's losing weight, all right, what are some strategic moves? Maybe I need to cut out all that gluten bready stuff, or maybe I need to exercise. What is it that you need? That's a strategic move. Don't make it 5 or 6. Make it one strong one. If it's business, all right, maybe I'm not getting the supplies in like I've always wanted. I know that there's a lot of companies that are having trouble getting supplies in. All right, so how can I work around that? How can I supply something else for my customers? How can I rise above this? This is in my control. Do you see? It's going from responding and being a victim in the circumstance to saying, hey, I'm going to make this an opportunity. And I think when you do that, you'll feel empowered, and that heaviness of the whole circumstance of life going on right now will leave you. It's amazing. You'll find you're not in that worry, doubt, and fear anymore because you have purpose. Now, today, and that is my magical nugget, folks. So today we have a man who understands this concept more than you know. His name is Dave Rippee. And David is an inspirational author and speaker who seeks to help people live their best lives. At age 25, in the midst of beginning a career at Fortune 50 company, David's life changed dramatically when a car accident left him paralyzed from the shoulders down. And despite this life-altering injury, he formulated a vision for his life. He became determined to fulfill his ambition to become a money manager, and he did. David went on to have a long and successful career working at both Merrill Lynch and the Vanguard Group. After achieving his own dreams, Dave wanted to help others to reach their own goals and live their best lives in spite of facing the greatest hardship of their lives. Isn't that fantastic? I would like to bring Dave Rippee on right now. Hello, David.
Hello, Alena.
Do you like David or Dave?
Either or, whatever feels more comfortable.
I don't know yet.
I get both regularly. It just depends on the person, really.
Yeah, I guess. All right. So, my gosh, you have beat all odds.
Well, I don't know about all odds. I mean, we all have our struggles and strife in life and things like that. But, I found myself, one night, late October, about 3 a.m. In the woods and couldn't move from the neck down afterward. And but there's been others that have obviously faced much more difficult challenges.
Oh, I think that's a pretty difficult challenge. I'm going to hit it right off the bat. So when you were, first of all, you had to get through the shock, I'm sure. Everybody would have some sort of feeling like, what has happened? Mm-hmm. But once you came to the reality of your circumstance, what gave you the fire, the saying that, okay, this is what I have, but this is not where I'm staying. I have things that I can control. I have things that I can possibly achieve. When did that awakening or that moment come for you?
I would say right after the hospital experience in a rehab. It was about a 6-month journey going through, various operations and things like that, then rehab to, strengthen my body, the muscle tone that was left. But I think the main thing happened when I got home. I had to leave a job because of the injury at a Fortune 50 company where I'd only been there 3 weeks. So I'd come out of college. Yeah, I came out of college down at Texas A&M and moved up north, took a job with an East Coast company. And literally 3 weeks later was in the woods, unable to move after, the car I was in was pretty well demolished. So after this, the first goal was getting out of the hospital and, then seeing what remains after that. So after about 6 months, we got up. We're back at home. It's 3 weeks later. I'm sitting around thinking, I can't go back to my other job because it involved real estate and things like that as well. So I thought, what are we going to do now? And I thought to myself, I still have ambition. I'm a competitive person by nature. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't be competitive physically anymore. I used to be pretty athletic and would compete in a lot of different things. Wrestled, played football in high school and things like that.
Sure.
And intramurals in college. But the main thing is that, I thought, what are we going to do? And I thought, being a money manager would be something interesting. So I decided that I needed to get from point A, where I knew I was sitting at home in a wheelchair, to point B, which would represent getting a position with a respectable, large money management firm. So I knew there were things I needed to do to get there, and I figured out about 4 different goals that I needed to set. So I always find that if we're in a bad situation or we find ourselves totally on a different path than we were prior to our trauma or injury, we should look to see what can I do, what do I want to do, and what's possible. So I was realistic to realize, obviously I'm not going to do anything physical. I can't go out and do jobs and drive around a lot. It would be more of a hassle. So I decided to pursue a career as a money manager and set goals. Stepping stones again. I'd look at each goal and determine, what needs to be fine-tune within that particular goal to kind of put them all together and mesh them to become that. And I think a lot of times when we look at goals, we don't look at what's in between where we are and where that goal is.
Right.
And as a result, we don't really maybe tighten the steps, so to speak, make sure the stairs don't fall out from underneath us. So
Exactly.
I found that by setting those goals, and I knew just for not to waste a lot of time on it, but
No. This is important. I would love to talk more about this.
Well, to go from where I am now, I had an education, Bachelor of Economics, but that's not enough to really know what you're doing when you're managing people's money. So I figured I needed more schooling, so I started taking some grad courses in finance, and had a girl drive me there. I knew I needed more industry-related experience, so I got a job with a large mutual fund company, which looked good on my resume as well. So I had that on there. I showed that I was pursuing further education with a graduate degree. I also knew I needed to hire assistants because being paralyzed from the shoulders down requires physical help as well as, what kind of person would I need in that office environment, writing out stock and bond tickets in a fast-paced brokerage environment. So I knew I needed to hire assistants that could help me not only with my physical needs, but help me with my career needs. And the other was I knew I needed adequate transportation. I knew I needed equipment that wouldn't fail, so I made sure I bought a nice-sized, large transport van that would be reliable. So I bought a new one just to make sure that we didn't have breakdowns in the middle of the highway or something. So I knew once we got it, so we started working on it. It took a while to get all this together. I had to go. I went and got a position. I didn't know how good my physical endurance was at first, coming out of a hospital. And so we started getting a job working about 4 hours a day, and we increased it all the way up to 8 to 10, because I knew that in a brokerage, fast-paced environment like Merrill Lynch, where I ended up working, that I had it, that I needed to be able to put in long days and hours. So I had that's my own endurance as well.
It's interesting. My dad was also in finance. I do know this world. My dad was in Shearson Lehman Hutton when he started out. Yeah, and I know what it takes. I know it is not an easy field. I know that it is an extremely competitive, and it's also, it's a hard field to be in. You're managing people's money, and you're also watching the world. And like right now, what's going on in the world, it's up, it's down, it's over here, it's over there. It's a hard field to be in.
Exactly, especially today with all the, the market volatility.
Oh gosh, yeah. And then, so when I'm hearing you say, and this is interesting because a lot of times when people want to go for their goals, or they don't, you're right. They look at where they are and they look at where they want to go. In fact, people teach that. And don't worry about the how, they say. Yeah, oh no, I hear that all the time. The how will come, and the how does come. But if you have listened to any of these shows, I'm all about the baby steps. And what you're talking about are the baby steps. And I have a specific question for you. When you looked at all the things you needed, you got wrapped up into, okay, these are the steps I'm going to do. This is the foundation I'm going to form. This is what I need. You sat down with your pad of paper, mentally or physically, and you wrote down the things you need. And you got wrapped up into doing. Not, I'm going to make $1 million by the end of this year. You got wrapped up in, how am I going to even create this? That's the Wu way of Tao. That's the flow, getting into the flow. You know that, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's how I work too. And it really is, it's an opposite way that most people work right now. And that's why when a tragedy happens to so many people, I think, my own theory, here we go. I'm going to do my own theory. Lord help us all. But when something really crashes in on us and the goal all of a sudden looks like, oh, this is too hard. Now I can't do it. And they give up, or they get caught up in the circumstance. It's just like in the Nugget, when I was talking this morning, outside forces caused, maybe supplies not to come into some entrepreneurs. Restaurants had to fire all their staff. Things happened, and people just folded. A lot of people folded.
Well, what I did, Alena, which I think helped me, was that I always looked at. Here's the thing: when you're dealing with with an injury like this, you're dealing with all sorts of circumstances that could alter your day immediately. I mean, we all have issues where we drive to work and our car breaks down, or the babysitter can't come in if we have children, things like this.
Right.
My circumstances, would include that, but it also toss in, the wheelchair doesn't work. My assistant has to get me up is sick, or all sorts of things. I get an injury, maybe, that was unexpected that we didn't have prepared for. So what we found was that by being as adaptable as possible, being almost like a chameleon, and being open-minded about trying to look at new ways to solve things in a field that I had no familiarity with, which was paralysis. So there was really pretty much a lot of trial and error, and a lot of it was and remember, today there's a huge advantage because we have better, artificial intelligence tools like Alexa and things like this. We have more internet access. When I got hurt, the internet was in its infancy, and there wasn't a lot of great, sources available on how to take care of a spinal cord injury. There wasn't websites to go on that I could hire assistants from. We had to put ads in a paper, and we had no idea who was going to apply. And so it was really kind of a dark, more of a nebulous type environment than it would be today for some.
Right.
But I always found that what I looked at when things would happen, and I would catch myself, and I know you mentioned this when I watched the show with Jewel, about you're feeling this negative thought coming in and how to zap that, or try to zap that beyond that thought.
Yes.
And one thing I did do, and I listened to that and heard some of that last night that you had gone over with, and what I find is that if we don't allow it to absorb us, if we don't allow it to get inside us, what I would do is take that test, take that challenge, take that unexpected, unforeseen event that would wreck my day, and I would look at that and just hold it at a distance and look at it more as a separate object from myself, and how am I going to take that, change what's in front of me and make it work to my advantage. So,
I love that.
Yeah, so what we would do is we would, any challenge. I just said, okay, I'm being tested. And I almost looked at it, there's an old show on called MacGyver, and how he would...
Oh, I remember that show.
And how he would try to solve things with just the simplest items, and try to break out with a pen in his pocket or something.
Yeah.
I found that my life worked around that, and that I would not allow events to absorb me, but I would just hold it at a distance and try to figure out.
Ooh, I want to. Yeah, that's a big concept. I do that too, actually. It's a lot of times when people, and I'm doing this more for the listeners, I know you know it, Davis, when we hear, when a negative comment comes to us, or a challenge, even a challenge, or things aren't working out right, and that negativism starts to come in, instead of absorbing it, instead of taking it in and saying, oh my God, this is happening to me again. Oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to even conquer this? And just sitting in it. Instead of doing that, you hold it out here like it is away from you. And you actually say, that's interesting.
Yeah, look at it as like a negative Rubik's Cube or something.
And, exactly. Like a Rubik's Cube or a puzzle or something. I'm not good at Rubik's Cube. So I like a puzzle that I can do.
Right.
So I think of it as a puzzle, and one of the pieces is just, I can't find the piece, but I will. Right. But it's out here. It's a challenge. It's something that is something for me. And I guess I always think with every challenge, there's an opportunity. It's either for growth or for something else, but there's an opportunity in there. And that helps me to keep it away from me. And I think that is really, if people can attain that and practice that, I think that would be one of the biggest so-called baby step tools that are like so important in their whole life. I mean, really, that's a crucial life tool.
I agree, and I think that just like what with Law of Attraction Radio, and you do it, Dwayne Dyer does it all.
Of course, I studied with him. I know.
And we look at that law and we think, what does that really mean, and things like that. But what I found was, and I wrote a chapter on my book, The Immortal Soul, and what you find is that the law of attraction has its roots in the law of vibration under universal laws. And what we find is that, similar energies attract similar energies, and you're experiencing life through our five senses. Some of us have 6 that are a little more, one's a little more in tune than others. But, basically it's just the information, it's light photons going into our brain, from our eyes and our ears, things like that, our sense of taste, touch, whatever. And how we process that information is going to determine how we react. Are we going to act negatively or feel negative? Or are we going to look at this like maybe a test and keep it away from us? Because once we get sad and depressed, it takes us that much longer to move forward.
God, you took a detour.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you, when you are starting to get yourself into that money management position and things are starting to flow for you, are you the type of person, how easy did you find it? How easy did you find it with people responding to you and what you have to deal with every day? I'm sure there were a lot of questions. Did you find that people had a hard time with it? What was your experience in the world?
About that is what I did was when I went out and applied for positions downtown Philadelphia, because that's where kind of the preeminent big flagship firms were. What I did was in my cover letter with my resume showed a guy that had, one of the goals I set was to get a Series 7, which is the brokerage license to trade stocks. So I had that out of the way. I had work experience on my resume. I had, I was taking some other grad course type stuff. And what I did do was I did not make one mention about my paralysis or the fact that, I was paralyzed.
Right.
So all the interviews I went into, I went in there just, saying, hey, look, I'm going to have an assistant help me. They're going to be serving as my hands and my feet, and they will, take notes and fill out order tickets and all that neat stuff. And they're going to be just as good, if not better, than one person coming in this position because, we have twice the creativity. We have 2 brains. We picked people to work for me that were at the local colleges majoring in finance, so they had a big investment, a big incentive to do well, and it helped me. So it was kind of a better win-win. When I was on a phone with a client, for instance, I could have my assistant filing away other stuff and things like that, so I could get a lot more done even than your typical broker sitting there that could use his hands and feet. So I had to portray that image to the prospective employers, and then I would, in turn, I would also explain about the mechanisms of the chair, how I haven't missed any days of work. At my position, I was working in the mutual fund industry prior to get a job at Merrill Lynch. So I kind of explained all that. And, it's hard in anybody's eyes to look at somebody sitting in a wheelchair and say, hey, we might have issues with this person as far as, missing work. But, we talked about the people we had hired, the equipment, and everything else. They could see that I try to be as proactive as possible.
Yes.
Beyond what a normal person would be that wasn't injured. Like, really try to kind of like standing on the edge of your labyrinth and looking out over to get to that final destination.
Yes.
And we use a lot of creative imagery and a lot of, meditation and things like that to kind of visualize that goal ahead. And I think, we all do it subconsciously or even consciously to some degree if we're daydreaming or something. But we try to take it a step further and, not just sit there to be peaceful and tranquil.
Yes,
that's good too.
We want that,
more to
but
set goals.
Yeah.
It's more the creative imagery to set goals.
The creative imagery, the imagination. And it is. You have to take your steps. That wonderful, I think, even that Wu Wei, which of course Wayne Dyer did talk about, you're right, and it's the Tao actually that he was pulling from, and that Wu Wei is knowing the steps that you're taking, you think it out fully. It's funny, we always want to concentrate on what it's like to have that last goal. That's what they're teaching now. When I'm finally there, when I have that millions of dollars, when I have that business that's thriving, when I have that New York Times bestseller, whatever it is that you're thinking, you always think of the end product, but it really is the imagination of the Wu Wei. I remember when I was in music, I was teaching in colleges, and although I had done church choirs, I had never done a choir in the academia world. And I didn't have a degree for it. I had it for voice. So when the director of the department said to me, hey, I want you to start a women's choir, I thought, oh my God, the first thing that came into my mind was, they're going to eat me alive. I don't have a degree.
Wow, yeah.
I said, no, I can't do that. I don't have a degree in that. And he said, well, I've heard your choirs. You can do this. Just do it. Now, I could have gone back and just thought, oh my God, I'm going to just die. They're gonna, and just get swallowed up with that. But instead, I got myself a cup of tea. If everybody knows I love my tea. I sat down under a tree and I tickled my imagination. I sat down, and you probably do this too, Davis. I started to think, okay, so if I had a women's choir, why would they want to sing? Why would these women want to come to me? And then I would start to imagine, and then I get even frivolous, and I say, okay, oh my gosh, because we're not just going to sing, we're going to paint the music. See, you start getting, that's where your imagination is so, guys, if you tap in and you tickle that imagination, so how are we going to paint that music? And I thought, oh my gosh, because of the chords and the way I can alter the sound with their voices, they're going to love to see how they can move in unison to just like a paintbrush and just alter the whole sound by the way they form their mouth. And I started just doing this, and I went through every aspect. Why would the audience want us there? Why would they come? And before I know it, by the time I got up in that half hour, I had my whole... I knew exactly what I was going to teach those women. I knew exactly what kind of music I wanted to do. I had it all in my imagination.
I know, it's amazing. And when you go back and look at guys like Nikola Tesla,
yes.
You look at Einstein, you look at Plato, you look at them. And what I learned was that, for instance, Einstein said he came up with his theory of relativity by visualizing himself riding on a comet in space. And to see how that worked, he said he'd sit back in his chair and with a cigar and close his eyes and meditate on that. And the neat thing about Nikola Tesla, what he could do was he could sit there and, like today's computer-aided design and programs, what he could do is do that in his mind. And he would turn an object over in 3D and just and develop in his mind to go back to that and continue to recreate it.
Davis, we are going to have to come right back, and I want to talk more about this because I think this is what people need. Well, in my opinion. You're listening to Magical Moments, and we will be right back.
Welcome back. You're listening to Magical Moments with Alena Chapman, helping you find ease and betterment with every episode. Download more on your favorite podcast platform. Now, here's Alena.
Welcome back to Magical Moments. I'm your host, Alena Chapman, and we have Dave Rippee, who is here to speak to us. And oh my gosh, just to kind of give you a little recap really quickly, we talked a lot about, life hands us a lot of pits sometimes. And what do we have to do? We have to make cherries out of them. And I know I goofed up that. I always goof up those little sayings. But you get the idea. And you don't just lay in the awfulness of everything. You can make something wonderful from it. But how do you do that? And one of the ways we talked about is also imagination. And we're talking about that power in that imagination. So, Davis, to carry on before the break, you were talking about Tesla, and I think most of the innovators, look at Steve Jobs. What did people used to say? They used to say, oh my gosh, I just talked to Steve Jobs. I just was in his world. And it's like people couldn't even handle it. He was so far into his head about how to hold a computer in your hand. They see things.
Yeah, and this is nothing new, obviously. I mean, Jesus went out in the desert and meditated for 40 days, and there's a lot of other ones from Plato to Solomon, you name it. I think that what I find is that, and as you had mentioned earlier during the break, is that a lot of times we enjoy shows on TV, we enjoy movies, we enjoy the works of others' creativity, whether it's using our imagination for a fiction type movie like Game of Thrones, or
yes,
dealing into something a little more nonfiction. But the thing is that our imagination is unlimited. Our subconscious, our conscious, we can take these tools. And I find, and what I can do is just mention, I'm also a certified hypnotherapist. So
yes,
what I find,
talk about that.
There's 4 states. There's the beta state, which are kind of our awake state.
Right.
You kind of have the alpha state, which is more like you might be staring at a fish tank or a fireplace, where it's kind of relaxing. And then we have our theta state, which is pretty much the state we fall into before we go to sleep or right when we wake up. Exactly. And what I found the best time to take advantage of problems that we want to try to work out is not before we go to bed, because, we can find that will keep us awake a lot of times. So what I find is that, and I use it in my hypnotherapy practice, what we find is that a lot of people have a hard time sleeping with insomnia and things like this because of the world issues. It could be their job. It could be due to COVID-19. It could be family-related. You name it. There's always something going on.
True.
But what I find is that they can take the nighttime and look at all these issues as like an object, like we were talking about earlier, about holding it out in front of you. Have it maybe a pie. One section of pie, 30% of your life is wrapped around family, that 20% is your career, and that's going fairly well, so it's only 20%. Maybe you have another 60% to where you're battling cancer, you're battling a disease. And we want to look at that, hold that out in front of us, and we want to take that, and what we do when we go into a hypnotic type state, we learn to hold that at a distance. And not only hold it at a distance, but we don't allow it to absorb us. And how we do that, we act like we're almost placing it inside like a golden vault in our mind. And we shut the door and lock it. We only open that vault and take out that issue out of that piece of pipe. It could be a pizza, whatever, and work on it then. And then put it back and lock it away. Because what we find is that if we allow our minds to take over our control us, and we don't take advantage of our subconscious or our conscious state, what we find is we become almost like victims. We become hostage to our thoughts and our actions. Our actions won't dictate a positive direction. So what I do is I tell them to lock that away at night, put it in a golden vault, shut the door, seal it, nothing can get to it. It's not going to bother you. You're going to sleep peacefully. In the morning, if these are issues, before we go to work, I think that getting that confidence level back up helps a lot. What I found in my business, that if I had to deal with a particularly difficult client or the stock didn't go in the right direction, and we had to talk about what I would use, the word I would use is just power. So I could sit there and echo that word power in my mind over and over. And then what I would find, it would continue to just, and I have fairly decent confidence anyway, but what I would find if I was feeling a little down that day or a little unsure how to approach this situation, if we use a word that brings our confidence level up, then we can meet anybody with our energy, our positive strengthen energy is the main thing, is strengthen our energy. Because that way we radiate that out, others can feel it. I mean, there's a lot of people that can feel like, well, they seem kind of down today, they didn't talk, they're all withdrawn. But if we can raise our levels of power during the morning, and another thing I would do is recommend if somebody's laying there or is sort of in a mild, relaxed state, is visualize your body like a golden battery, and where you feel this golden energy coming down to your crown chakra, for instance.
Yes, yeah.
You just feel it from the feet all the way up till you re-energize yourself. So there's a lot of ways we can use our imagination.
A lot of ways. Yeah.
To bring ourselves to a state of positivity, a state to where we can accomplish our goals. We can beat down that trauma that's been bothering us, and we can try to approach life more in almost like even a Buddhist type fashion, where we're kind of walking the middle path and not let things get to us. And what I've learned is that life today, especially for many, depending on how big that part of that issue is in that pie they got in front of them, is looking at life kind of like it's a hurricane. We all go through different storms in our lives. Sometimes they're vicious tornado-type hurricanes. But if we can find ourselves in the middle of this, in other words, in that sweet spot to where we don't allow the circling winds, problems to grab us by the arm and rip us into this vortex. If we can stay in the middle and just relax, realizing that we've already gone over major traumatic events in our past.
Exactly.
All learn how to handle adversity to different degrees. Okay, but we've all had adversity. It could be the loss of our parents, our loved ones, our grandparents, a child, our job, our car broke down. I mean, there's always different levels of degrees of adversity. But if we look back and say, hey, I worried myself to death that week before I had to go in for that big meeting with my boss. If I would have just avoided that and not wasted that whole weekend all tied up in insomnia and everything else, look how easy that went for me. So I think we need to just look. If we look more on the positive side of things, even though it might be very dark looking consciously, but with imagination, with kind of looking ahead, working out the goals, doing the steps as you mentioned.
Yes, I get this, and I have a question for you.
Do anything.
Because, many people say, you got to be more positive. And so what do I see in people? I see people who are doing this so-called false positive. Do you know what I mean? The people who, they're trying to be positive, but they crack. They're fragile. I call them fragile because you can watch. It's awful to say. And I give them kudos for trying. But they're not positive inside. They're positive. They're trying to be positive, but it's so hard. They're coming at it the hardest way possible. There are easier ways to. It's got to come from inside. You can't force yourself to be positive. Address that a little bit, and I'll put my 2 cents in. But I want to hear what you think about that.
Well, that's what it's all about, really. I mean, if we look back at Herman Hesse, for instance, or even Buddha, and if we look at just what Hesse said the goal of life is to find ourselves.
Yes.
But the only way we can really find ourselves is to go inside, and that'd be through meditation, chanting, hypnosis, something like this, creative imagery. And I think what I tell people off the bat, I say, look, what do you enjoy? What are you good at? And I'll say, well, someone will say, well, I can draw very well, and I have a natural ability to play the piano just by hearing it, hearing other things. And I say, wow. And I say a lot of that could have roots in a past life. I don't want to go too far off field here with reincarnation, but if we look at the Bible, for instance, I mean, they took reincarnation out in 553 AD.
Right, they did. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, and if they left it in there, I think a lot of people would have much more confidence realizing that they're an immortal divine soul, that they have abilities that are God-given from source and creative consciousness, etc. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people don't have that feeling, and they feel, like this is it. This is all I am. It's just, this life, this is me, and being in a sleep type situation where we don't realize some of the talents that we have. We don't explore them. They lay dormant, and that could be the hardest thing to get through a life that's faced with things like we have today, for instance. So I think if a lot of people look at today and say, you know what, let me write down 5 things I'm good at. Let me write 5 things I'd like to work on, and set those as goals. Keep it away from the obvious stuff, the family, the career, the relationships. Write down what do I like to do? What am I good at? What do I like to improve upon? And what would I like to learn is my third list.
Yes, I love that one.
If we do those things, we can find that, wow, I really, really feel happy about that painting I just did. I just love that song lyrics I came up with. I think they're really good. And I think we can find ways to feel good about our situation in light of what faces on the TV every night, what faces on the Internet, the bickering back and forth in politics, the problems in the world. I think if we can separate ourselves and say, let me just separate from all that. Let me sit down, go inside myself, and let me get to know myself a little better. Let's not get swept up in the hurricanes and the tornadoes of trauma around us, or what's being portrayed in 99% of the news shows. And thankfully, Alena, your show's the opposite of all that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. When I heard, and I'm going to use myself as an example, I often do, or my poor mother, one of us. But when this corona hit, and when tragedy, and I'm using corona as an example also, but it could be anything. When something hits in my life, that hurricane comes in, I never ever, I don't feel the hurricane. This is what you do when you hold it at a distance. You don't actually feel the hurricane. Sure, I couldn't do workshops in my house anymore. I have a lot of land, beautiful, wonderful workshops. I couldn't do that anymore. Corona hit. Nope, we all have to stay home and no social contact. Okay, got it. So it's not like financially I wasn't hit, because I was. That's a lot of money right there. However, it didn't seep in, folks. It doesn't seep into my world. Somehow I think, okay, that's the state. But my mind, this is the thing. This is where you want to get your mind. And all the tools that we're all talking about here, and the hypnotherapy, the imagination, the meditation, what it does is it's training your mind to go right for where you want it to go. And mine, I want it to go to, okay, what can I do? How can I change things? I call it morphing. I say, okay, we got to morph this then. How do I want to morph it? Oh my gosh, that's fun. I get to use my imagination now. Do you see? It's not false sense. It's not false positive. It comes from inside. And that takes using some of these tools to build that inside yourself, to know that when anything comes, oh my gosh, we get to play. We get to figure out a new way.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I think is very important. And I think that, as you mentioned, going inside is important, because the false positive can maybe feel like a shell that we're living in, almost like
yes.
Like
it's
a raw
so
egg.
fragile. That's what I mean. It cracks. You can crack it. You say one wrong word and they crumble.
Yeah. We haven't solidified our positivity to really feel that coming from outside, radiating outward. What I would say is that, I think, we all have the tools, every one of us. I mean, Jesus said others will do greater things than him anyway. But I think the main thing to do is believe in ourselves, number one, and feel that, hey, this is a game. I'm on a stage, almost like Shakespeare shared, and I have a role. My role is I came down and maybe took these soul lessons, and, here I am. Let's see how it works out, and the complexity of all the interactions with all the other people around us, playing different roles as well. And I think if we know we're an actor on that stage of life, if we know that we will interact with others, and if we know that, this stage is just one of many that we've been on in different plays and different experiences and different roles.
It opens up worlds.
Totally.
It opens up worlds. It's like all of a sudden it's, all right, what do I want to do? Not what do I have to do. What do I want to do? There's a difference.
Knowing you're in a lucid dream and being able to manipulate that dream, and that's really where we want to strive.
Yeah. And of all the things, the meditation, I want to really quickly touch on the hypnotherapy too, because that's an avenue I haven't done myself too much. I've done, I don't know why I haven't. I just haven't. I've taught myself triggers, good triggers. I've done that kind of thing. I've done the past life regression, but I haven't done the How have you found the hypnotherapy has helped you?
Well, when I first got into it, it was back when I was initially hurt, and I found that, learning more about myself, I wasn't sure about if past lives were real, because obviously it wasn't in my Presbyterian upbringing.
They don't talk about that, do they?
Later we learned quickly that, things were, not that the Bible's wrong, it was just things were taken out of it that might have changed our perspective quite a bit. But what I found was that, I found that by going inside, by doing a past life regression myself, I said, wow, maybe there is more than just what appears to me on the surface or what I can just feel I know. And I think that's the main thing. I've always had another thing is I'm a very curious person.
Me
so I've
too.
always had an interest in more what's behind the veil.
Me too.
Where did my dear grandmother go I miss?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Like, wow, is it, really, what is there? Because, I never really quite felt comfortable just taking the words of somebody that was reading to me. And that's what Buddha said. Buddha said, look, don't believe me. Don't believe the teachers. Don't believe your customs.
No.
Go learn. Find out yourself. And
go try it. Yes.
Once you learn who you are, then you know the secrets of the universe, and that's the key.
Tell us, okay, now you have some books out there.
Yeah, I have one book in particular. Well, there's two books in particular that kind of deal with this process of self-discovery. And the first book I wrote was called The Immortal Soul. And what I did was I took 8 clients into a deep, pretty much a subconscious to a superconscious state, which is a harder state for some people to reach. But by going into that state, you're pretty much tapping into like their divine self. I mean, it will tell us what their soul color is, how evolved they are, how well they're doing on their soul lessons.
I do this too.
Where I found it very helpful today, and I think Dr. Newton and Dr. Byron Weiss did this, is that people would come to me and say, Dave, I got this sciatic nerve pain in my leg. I can't explain. I don't know where it's from. I didn't play sports in high school. I've done the MRIs and the CAT scans and not showing any results. All the specialists can't help me. But it hurts like heck. And what I found was we go, well, let's think about that, because I'd already seen some on Unsolved Mysteries about phobias and drowning and things like that about related to past lives. So I said, let's go to this. This is after they shared about 2 or 3 past lives with me. I say, let's go to the source of the pain for the sciatic nerve. And then they would say, I see myself on a battlefield. I have a uniform on, Revolutionary War, and I just got shot in my left hip with a .50 caliber muzzle ball.
Oh my
and
God.
I'm laying on the field. I see myself laying on the field. My leg's pretty much gone. I'm bleeding out. I died right there on the field. So what I find is that it's very interesting. These phobias, these traumas, these pains that we can't explain, they can't be solved conventionally, often have their roots in a past. It scars our DNA in a sense.
It does.
What happened is the more they listen to this recording on their leg pain or sciatic nerve issue, the more it starts to dissolve. It starts to go away. It's almost like, and I explain it this way, it's almost like watching a horror movie the first time. And you're just like, oh my gosh, we're shocked to death, and we see that. We continue to look at that life. We look at that death. We look at that trauma. And we see it the 7th or 8th time, or we hear it the 7th or 8th time. It's not going to have any impact on us.
That's right.
Pain goes away.
That's interesting. I've done past life regression, and I have to say, it helped me tremendously in this life. And because and also I understood why some things were happening over and over.
Yes.
You can forgive up to wazoo, but there was something that kept happening anyway. I had to find out what was going on in my heart. And when I did, and I happened to fall into it. It was a friend of mine who said, you know what, why don't we just play a game? I said, okay, I'm game. Before I know, I'm transported back to the Baltic Sea. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it just rang with me. And ever since I learned that experience, it healed me.
Yes.
And sometimes when we begin to learn that we truly are spirits in a body, and we understand that the spiritual, the mental and spiritual, our minds, our imagination is linked to the spiritual. You open that up, you actually discover that that's more real than what's going on here.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that's
amazing.
Well, I just want to mention, I did discuss the universal laws. And what people realize is it doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter what your belief is. Your life is going to be ruled by those universal laws. And 4 of them are mutable, 3 of them aren't. The law, the first 3 are not. You can't change those. And the law of attraction has its root in the 3rd law, the law of vibration.
Right. We've talked about that here. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other 4 you can manipulate. In other words, the law of polarity, the law of rhythm, the law of cause and effect. We can manipulate these. It's set.
Law of vibration.
Yes, and we can find that
law of gestation.
Laws properly, we can change our lives.
We can. And how can people find out more about you?
Well, I'd say the best place to go would probably be just my website, davidrippee.com. David, RIPPY.com. And on there, I put what I do for people as well as I do recordings. So I have about 14 recordings on there now that, deal with insomnia, chronic pain, stress, anxiety, addiction, all these things. So I put those out there just for people to try and check them out. And hopefully get some relief out of them. They're all free, and so I just put them on there. The books are on there. They're all on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's probably easier to just go to Amazon. But what they do is they're sort of like the threads. I mean, my first book, Captain of My Soul, is about my journey, setting goals.
I love that. That's from Invictus. You know that, Captain of My Soul.
Yes.
Yes. I love that poem.
It's true. I mean, we're all here, and we're the captains of our soul. And what I found was that by setting goals helped me tremendously. Finding acceptance, because it's not easy to find acceptance when you're paralyzed.
Interesting.
But make the best of it. And then I went from there into the guidebook I never had. It's called Powering Through Paralysis, How to Survive and Thrive with Disability or Disease. And I did 16 chapters. One chapter's on meditation, one's on hypnosis for healing, one's on setting goals, one's on hiring assistants, all those things that really wasn't out there when I got hurt. So I kind of took my life experience on how to stay healthy. And, we wrote a book on that. And then the third book kind of takes us more into a hypnotic, a journey finding ourselves, about the universal laws, about soul color evolution. Why are we here? What's my purpose? Will I see my departed loved ones again?
Yes.
I thought that was important for people, too, because the fear of death is one of the biggest fears there is. And if we got that out of our face, if we got 50% of that, that's a big issue for about 50% of people.
Oh my gosh, more than that actually.
Yeah, or more, probably everybody to some degree. Like, where do I go? Is this it? Is this all there is? And what's my purpose? And things like that.
Isn't it funny? Don't you find that funny? That I see a lot of people who are extremely faithful, and they love their faith, but they're so scared of death. It's the unknown.
It's because, first off, they took reincarnation out of the Bible. That didn't help. If we have one life and we die, and this is it, I mean, my God, I
know.
Rest all the time.
That's true.
If they realize that, wait a minute, this is just, all this good detail we're gathering, all these experiences we're having, just are flowing back to the collective consciousness. Or God, Brahma, Yahweh, whatever you want to use.
Whatever use, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's God, that's it. And we're here to gather experiences, and we're here to learn and grow back so that we're once more back on top of the mountain, so to speak.
I always say we evolve. You know what I mean? We're here to evolve. Yeah. Guys, we are here. You come down and you think, okay, these are the things I want to experience. And it is an experience.
Yes.
And when we come down here, we start experiencing things. That's why we are supposed to taste and feel and touch and get to know as many. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's contrast because we already know what it's like where we're from. Mm-hmm. So we want to experience contrast. We bring all this on ourselves.
Well, we do. We pick our journey, and
we pick our journey.
And we do this to learn, to grow, to
evolve our soul.
Exactly.
And I personally think that when we evolve our soul, we help to evolve the whole universe consciousness. And
exactly. And I'll tell you one thing I came up with, and it's interesting, but even Mother Teresa said this. She said, she goes, they looked at her and said, well, Mother Teresa, what do you think? And she goes, well, it's like an ocean, and I might be that one drop in the ocean, but that ocean would be less if that drop wasn't there.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
And that's the whole truth. So really, we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to heaven, we owe it to all the universe for us to grow and evolve. And if we're finding ourselves stuck, it's up to us to say, wait a minute, is this the role I want to play?
Well, it's interesting, Alena, your show, Law of Attraction Radio, and shows like this, the main thing is that, the tools are out there. And the question is, are we going to pick up that tool and maybe utilize it to make our life better? And, instead of trying to build some, we could, instead of using a stick to build something, maybe we can mentally build in our minds, some easier machine or technology to help us. And, so like I said, the tools are there. I wrote about them in the books.
Yeah.
Ways to maybe try to make our lives better. But I think if we had a better inkling for most that, we're here for experiences, we chose what we're doing, we chose this because we thought we were strong enough on the other side to do this. And by sharing our experiences and knowing that, we're all connected, we're all energy, we're all connected, whether it's the tree, the neighbor down the street, whatever, car, building, whatever, we're all connected. And if we see ourselves sort of in that web of energy and try to be the light in that web that radiates out and maybe lights up some of the areas where others might be struggling, I think that's
Yeah.
the best thing we can do.
I think that is one of the best things we can do. For everyone out there, guys, I know that a lot of us feel stuck, but we have the tools. Some of those strategic baby step tools could be, well, I'm going to look into this hypnotherapy, or I'm going to start meditating. And by the way, we have a 7-day reset to reclaim your inner calm that's free. But in that 7-day, I do have ways to get that meditation going, to really find that sweet spot, or to start journeying. I present you with different methods of meditation that you can try and find that way that works for you. But it's time to look inside. If you feel it inside, know it inside, and you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. You have to remember that.
It's energy. I mean, our thoughts, deeds, and actions are energy.
Our energy.
Whether
It's time.
to hold it in our hand or it's our mind, it's still energy, and we can manipulate it and work with it.
Thank you so much, Davis Rippee.
Right.
You did that
That's
again.
okay.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, it's easy to do.
And I just loved having you on. And for everyone out there, hey, remember, spirit is love. And the more you open your heart to love and everything, you are spirit, living spirit. Namaste.
This has been Magical Moments with Alena, featuring Alena Chapman. If you missed an episode, download it now on iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn, CastBox, Deezer, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. Learn more online at soulmanifesto.com.